Darn Woods. Thank you for watching. Today I think all of my usuals, all of my regulars are probably out on mission or otherwise occupied. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Yes, it's a little late and I'm okay with that. Today we're going to be talking, I figured since today is as close as we could get to the Buddha's, the Mahayana version of the Buddha's passing, which would be February 15th. We're going to remind ourselves of some of the things that he taught, and specifically, I kind of wanted to go over today a little bit on the precepts. So we're going to do the 5 and the 8 precepts. The 5, of course, we always chant twice in every service at the beginning and at the end. We're also going to go over the 8 a little bit, because this would typically be a day where, in a lot of Mahayana populations, many people would go and take additional precepts and kind of try and live a more monastic-ish life. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and get us in, get us on, get us out, and get us on with our lives, so we can all get moving along. And those who are watching from the field or from wherever you may be, do feel free to, I'm going to keep this short specifically to make sure that we all have time to do what we need to do, and minimize the interruption, because it's kind of a Buddhist thing. We like to do that. We don't like to be like the center of attention when we don't have to be. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll take it from there. And in the interest of time, we're just going to do a very brief 5-minute meditation. Do feel free to join us, and then for those who are not watching live, do feel free to pause as soon as the meditation is done. Do whatever other meditation you feel is appropriate, and then come back and watch the Dharma reading and Dharma talk after that. So, we're going to get started though. mentioned, we're going to start off with the 5 precepts, and then we're going to move into the 8. So I need to be a little closer over here. That would be a good idea. Scrape that just a bit. There. Okay. So for the 5 precepts, we're going to read the Buddha's definition, or the Buddha describing them and talking about what they are. So, there are amongst 8 streams of merit, streams of the wholesome, nourishments of happiness that are heavenly, ripening in happiness, conducive to heaven, and that lead to whatever is wished for, loved, and agreeable, to one's welfare and happiness. What are the 8? Here amongst a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the Buddha. This is the first stream of merit, stream of the wholesome, nourishment of happiness that is heavenly, ripening in happiness, conducive to heaven, that leads to whatever is wished for, loved, and agreeable, to one's welfare and happiness. Further, a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the Dhamma. This is the second stream of merit that leads to whatever is wished for, loved, and agreeable, to one's welfare and happiness. Further, a noble disciple has gone for refuge to the Sangha. This is the third stream of merit that leads to whatever is wished for, loved, and agreeable, to one's welfare and happiness. There are further monks, these 5 gifts, and these 5 are the last of the 8. And they are the ones that we chant twice per service, right at the beginning and at the end. Pristine, of long-standing, traditional, ancient, unadulterated, and never before adulterated, that are not being adulterated, and that will not be adulterated, not despised by the wise, ascetics, and Brahmins. What are these 5 gifts? Here, monks, a noble disciple gives up the destruction of life and he abstains from it. By abstaining from the destruction of life, and here we have that one nice little word, which if you translate it one way, it says abstain. If you translate it another way, particularly for the lay community, usually it's translated as refrain, right? So we're going to try not to do this thing. Monks and nuns are completely forbidden, right? They absolutely abstain from this in all shapes and forms. We, the Dharma community, the lay community, tend to instead refrain from, and that's important. That's an important distinction. So, here, monks, a noble disciple gives up the destruction of life and abstains from it. By abstaining from the destruction of life, the noble disciple gives to immeasurable beings freedom from fear, hostility, and oppression. By giving to immeasurable beings freedom from fear, hostility, and oppression, he himself will enjoy immeasurable freedom from fear, hostility, and oppression. This is the first of those great gifts and the 4th stream of merit. Further, monks, a noble disciple gives up the taking of that which is not given and abstains from it. By abstaining from taking what is not given, the noble disciple gives to immeasurable beings freedom from fear and so forth. This is the second of those great gifts and the 5th stream of merit. Further, monks, a noble disciple gives up sexual misconduct and abstains from it. By abstaining from sexual misconduct, the noble disciple gives to immeasurable beings freedom from fear and so forth. This is the 3rd of those great gifts and the 6th stream of merit. Further, monks, a noble disciple gives up false speech and abstains from it. By abstaining from false speech, the noble disciple gives to immeasurable beings freedom from fear and so forth. This is the 4th of those great gifts and the 7th stream of merit. Further, monks, a noble disciple gives up wines, liquors, and intoxicants, the basis for negligence, and abstains from them. By abstaining from wines, liquors, and intoxicants, the noble disciple gives immeasurable beings freedom from fear, and so forth. This is the 5th of those great gifts and the 8th stream of merit. Right? So here we have the first 5 that we are all supposed to practice as best we can, right? Nobody's we're not perfect. We are on the path and we are working on it. We are climbing that mountain. We are doing as best we can. But ultimately, if we don't necessarily do all 5 of these things all the time, well, we make up for it, right? It's a bit of a stumble on the path, but we make up for it and we keep going. We don't sit there and condemn ourselves because, oh, well, that one time you got drunk and failed. It's a human thing, right? As long as that human failure doesn't cause someone else harm, doesn't cause oneself harm, or doesn't cause both harm. Now, obviously, should you refrain from, and if you've taken some sort of monastic vow, abstain from that? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the Buddha is really clear about that. Monks and nuns are expected to do all of these things all the time, right? So the first 5, refraining from destruction of life, refraining from taking what is not given, aka stealing, in any way, shape, or form. And yes, this includes, there's a whole, I could go off on a whole tangent about each and every one of these, what they specifically mean, right? Because what does the Buddha mean by taking what is not given? Does that also include not paying proper wages? Yes, it does. Who knew? The Buddha is real clear about that, right? And there's whole Dharma talks, and there's whole passages within the Dharma specifically talking about that and other ways that one might take what is not given, right? Because especially in that case, you're taking the labor that was given and not paying for it, right? Or in other cases, you might, make a contract with somebody and walk off with the goods and not pay for it. That's the same thing. That's still stealing, right? It's still theft. And that's also the Buddha saying, yeah, don't do that. Not a good idea, right? Same thing with the third, which is abstaining or refraining from sexual misconduct. Now, obviously, monks and nuns, we can go into the reason why there are entire parts of the monastic code, the monastic rules that deal explicitly and specifically with very, very tiny parts of exactly what you don't do, right? Monks and nuns, utterly forbidden from all sexual contact. Utterly forbidden. Now, if a monk or a nun is forced into a sexual act, that's not their they're not responsible for that. That's not breaking the precept. But they have, if they willingly choose to do so, there's a whole piece in the Vinaya, the monastic code, about why you don't have sex with animals as a monk or a nun. Why did the Buddha have to put this into place? Well, because one monk tried it and thought he could get away with it. And turns out, no, that's the wrong answer. No, right? So, as far as the Dharma Buddhist community and the lay community, what that means for us, what does sexual misconduct entail? It entails any kind of sexual act or so forth with somebody who is either married or promised in marriage, right? Somebody who's engaged. So married people off limits. That's a no-go. Somebody who is under the protection of their parents, aka children, or those who are mentally incapable of offering consent, and therefore protecting and being protected by their parents, they are completely off limits. And the third category is somebody who has taken specific religious vows excluding themselves from sexual activity. If you, as one of the Dharma Buddhas, engage in this activity, you are wrong, right? Now, does that include all sexual activity, especially for the lay community? Absolutely not. For the lay community, the Buddha didn't care really about what lay people did with their sex lives, as long as it was consensual, didn't hurt anybody. So BDSM off the table, and it didn't cause problems, right? It didn't inflict or infringe on one of those three categories that we just talked about. If it did, off limits. If it didn't, well, the lay community is going to do what the lay community is going to do. They're going to mate and have kids and all of that, and and enjoy each other's presence. No problem, provided it doesn't infringe on one of those three categories. Fourth, disciple gives up false speech and abstains from it. And this one, oh, there is so much we can go into with this one. This one, the Buddha said, this is one to watch for, because if you will lie, you will engage, you have the capacity to violate any of the other precepts, right? If you're willing to engage in false speech, whether this is, gossip, whether this is lies, whether this is, that kind of thing, or whether this is idle chatter, right? The Buddha was not really a fan of small talk, right? You kind of get that idea. So you don't engage in false speech, such as lies or gossip, or rumors or any of that, because what does that do? It causes all kinds of damage. Now, I'll get to that as soon as I get through the fifth one. So, the fifth one is the noble disciple gives up wines, liquors, and intoxicants because they're the basis for negligence. This one should kind of go without saying. Like, if we are looking at it seriously, how much harm can you do if you are engaging in, like, if you're getting yourself drunk, or if you're getting massively high, or you're getting, whatever other drug-addled things might happen. If you're not in your right mind, if you're not able to be present, if you're not able to be mindful, if you're not able to be aware, what kinds of things might happen if that's the case? And the answer is honestly pretty simple, right? If you're willing, like if you're engaging in that kind of conduct, there's a pretty strong chance somebody's going to get hurt. And that's never a good time, right? So if we're talking about the lay community, yeah, we know that the lay community is going to go out and have drinks from time to time. We also know that some medicines have alcohol in them, and that's actually not, surprisingly, that is not a violation of the precept. If you have to take medicine because you're ill, and that medicine happens to have some alcohol in it, like, cough syrup has, some cough syrups have 10% alcohol or whatever, or not 10%. 10% is a wild number. If it has a certain, a limited amount of alcohol, not a violation of the precepts, because you're not consuming it to get drunk. You're not consuming it to become intoxicated, I would hope. Getting drunk off of cough syrup, I'm told, is very difficult and requires a lot of effort. And you definitely would not want to do that. No. Yeah. At any rate, so those are things which we as Buddhists are told, no, this is things we avoid. We don't do this. We choose not to do these things, right? So we don't go out and have a glass of wine if we don't have to, right? There are some social circumstances that the Buddha was aware of that maybe, I guess you could argue, would be, like it's an obligation and you have to do it in some cultures. I'm thinking like Japan and Korea, where, there are certain times where part of your job is to go out with your colleagues and have a few drinks, because it's a part of the socialization process. It's a part of becoming part of the team. As long as you can do so in moderation and mindfully and not become intoxicated, which it's, for some, that's going to be one drink. For some, that's going to be, some are going to have a little bit more tolerance than others. But the point here is you don't go out and get intoxicated, right? And to do that, the absolute best way to do that is to simply avoid it altogether. If you don't have to drink, don't. Totally okay. It looks like one of ours is finally, like, they're showing up massively late, and that's okay. I'll go over all the info with them later. All right. So for Uposatha days, for those special days, we do have 8 precepts, which a lot of people take. Not everybody, but a lot of people, right? And so these would start off, they're very much the same, right? As what we would normally chant, right? I undertake the precept to refrain from destroying living creatures. I undertake the precept to restrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual activity. I undertake the precept to refrain from incorrect speech. Now, these ones, the first four, match exactly. Then they threw a couple of extra ones in there before the last one. Welcome in. I will absolutely back brief you on all of the stuff that I just did. So actually, it never hurts to go back over and kind of reiterate the message so that people get it. Let's make sure you have a copy. This being as close as we could get to the Mahayana observance of the Buddha's passing, I figured it was a good idea to talk about some of the things that he talked about. So today was a good chance for us to go through the precepts, what they mean, and what they, how we're supposed to put them into practice and why. So a little bit of, we're probably I'm gonna go through these really like lightning speed style, just to make sure that you have them. So we started out with the moral discipline portion of the 5 precepts, right? There are 8 streams of the wholesome streams of merit that are conducive to one's happiness and leading to one's welfare. These are taking refuge in the Buddha, taking refuge in the Dharma, taking refuge in the Sangha, and the 5 precepts, which we chant every single service twice, once at the beginning, once at the end. Those 5, depending on how you translate it, there's one word in there that if you translate it one specific way, particularly for monks and nuns, it is very clearly an abstain from, like absolutely no-go, absolutely no, you don't do this at all. That word typically for the lay community is refrain from. We usually translate it as refrain from. So if you have the opportunity to not do this, then you don't. If you don't have the opportunity to not do it, you do the best you can. Right? And none of us are perfect. We're not sitting here trying to say, I'm going to always do all of these every single day, all the time. Right? Some of us are going to fail at some of these almost regularly. Right? And those 5 are, I'm going over the monastic side of the house, we'll go over the lay side of the house a little bit later. Right? So, a noble disciple abstains from the destruction of life, abstains from taking what is not given, and there's all kinds of ways that is phrased, abstains from sexual misconduct, and there are 3 categories of that, abstains from false speech, and that doesn't just mean lies, that also includes gossip and rumors. And the 5th one, the noble disciple abstains from wines, liquors, and intoxicants, the basis for negligence. And we kind of went over a little bit of what each of those means after the service. We'll chat out like all of what each of those entails. The other thing that we did is that for a lot of special days within the Buddhist tradition, on the back we have the 8 precepts that many lay Buddhists practice during special days, such as the Buddha's passing, the Buddha's birth, the Buddha's enlightenment, Sangha Day, the end of the rainy season retreat, or the monthly Uposatha days, which is the new moon and the full moon, specifically the full moon. And these pretty much match the 5 precepts, but there are 2 that are added. And again, this is for lay practitioners who just want to do a little bit more, who want to be a little bit closer to the monastics, and typically those personnel will wear white during these days to indicate that they are taking special, they're engaging in special religious practices. So this is, I undertake the precept to refrain from destroying living creatures. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual activity. And here even, for those who do practice the 8 precepts, this is an absolute for those days. Not necessarily for their entire life, but just for right of speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating drinks and drugs which lead to carelessness. I undertake the precept to refrain from eating at the forbidden time. So this is monastic type fasting where you only eat from dawn until noon, and you don't eat in the afternoon. So it's a kind of a fast, but maybe not the most ardent of fasts. I undertake the precept to refrain from dancing, singing, music, going to see entertainments, wearing garlands, wearing perfumes, and beautifying the body with cosmetics. You can imagine how well this one goes over. Like, if you're going to take this one, it is tough. It is really tough, especially in our media-saturated environment where all of these things are super present all the time. This one is the challenge, the one that is perhaps the greatest challenge for the lay community. If you're going to observe the Uposatha with the 8 precepts, this one is probably going to be the strongest challenge. Because like the first 5, it's not really that hard, right? I'm not gonna kill anything. I'm not gonna steal. I'm not gonna have sexual activity. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to get drunk. Those are not super difficult, right? Those are things that we should be doing every day anyway, right? Eating at the forbidden time, that one, most people I think can probably endure that fairly easily, especially if it's just for one day, or maybe like a week. And the last one, I undertake the precept to refrain from lying on a high or luxurious sleeping place. This one, like if you want to go out, the best place to practice this, honestly, as a Dharma is probably in the field. Like, it's not that particularly difficult to do all of this stuff if you're out in a field training environment. And maybe that's a good chance to throw in some extra practice and just be a little bit more focused on practice. But yeah, that's kind of the precepts, and I just kind of wanted to go over those as a way of kind of reminding ourselves of what the Buddha taught, and kind of give us something that we can do as Dharma Buddhas, something that we can do to put into our daily practice to keep ourselves aware and mindful of what we're doing, so that we are following what the Buddha taught. So, okay. I'm going to leave the Dharma talk proper there. We'll go ahead and close out with the chanting and vows, and then, like I said, I'll give you kind of a back brief on some of those. Nam thanks for watching, Derm Boots. We'll see you guys next time.